Hey, what's up guys? Sorry the volume was pretty low on my last video. I got a new camera and it's kind of a fine line between distortion and low volume, so I do apologize about that. I will be re-uploading this video and just go over it right now. Fighting rifles are very subjective. That's something that's going to vary person to person and based on your specific application. So don't expect everyone's rifle setup or AR pistol setup to look just like yours. It shouldn't look like everyone else's. That's something that you learn from experience and based on your specific application. Barrel length is very important with 5.56 since it does get lethality from velocity, so that's something we have to weigh the pros and cons on and decide what barrel length is right for you. Obviously there's a place for a 16-inch barrel or even longer, but I do like shorter barrels like a 10.3 or this 11.85 depending on what its use is for. It's a little bit more compact, lighter, and that means more maneuverable, which is important, you know, in structures and in and around vehicles. For the muzzle device, I use just flash hiders. Compensators can be pretty obnoxious, especially on a shorter barrel like this. Even if it's just an A2 bird cage or something like this Silencer Co. ASR, or you know, a nice surefire flash hider. For the bull carrier group, this is obviously a long stroke piston AR, so I will be demonstrating on this DI bull carrier group. You want to make sure you have nice stakings on your gas keys so your fasteners do not back out, and you also want to make sure you have a nice stout extractor spring. That's very important. You want to make sure you have nice efficient extraction and the claw of your extractor will not slip over the rim of your casing. I do like the Springco extractor springs, and I've also used these BCM extractor spring upgrade kits a lot. Obviously you get the spring, the insert, and the rubber O-ring, which is very important the shorter your barrel length gets. For the charging handle, that is actually kind of important. Obviously a mil-spec charging handle will work, but something like this Radian Raptor SD, you can get a lot more leverage on it than say a mil-spec charging handle, which is important when it comes to clearing a malfunction. If you have something like a stuck casing in your chamber, you want all the leverage you can actually get. For the optics, this setup is a little bit different than most. There's a place for, you know, etched reticles. I do like etched reticles just in case the battery dies. You still have a way to, you know, aim the weapon. Right now I have an eotech and I have an RMR as a backup optic. This eotech does have the 2-dot reticle, so if you know your holds, you can use this optic to great effect, and I really like it. It is on a lower 1/3 co-witness with a quick detach lever. Obviously I cannot see my sights through the window since it is on a 1/2-inch riser, so I could theoretically take the optic off and put my sights up, but I'd much rather have a quicker way to you know, aim the weapon if my eotech goes down, and that's why I have an offset RMR on the 1/2-inch riser as well. They're both at lower 1/3 co-witness, and since they are both on a 1/2-inch riser, they are still at the same height, so if my eotech goes down, all I have to do is cant the weapon and go back to work. For the iron sights, these are Magpul Pro sights. I do like these. You do not need a front sight tool to actually adjust the zero on your front sight, which I really like. I also like the Troy sights. There are 7 different models, and you do have to press in a button to actually close the sights, so they do lock in the upper position, and I really like that. These do have detents, and it does take a little bit of force to actually push your sight down, but regardless, I would feel comfortable using either sets of sights. You want to be very careful with your iron sight zero though. If you can use your irons as backup sights, you want to zero your iron sights through your optic window. If you zero your sights first, then put your optic on, your zero will change since you are looking at your iron sight, your front sight, through a piece of shaped glass. So that's something you do have to take into account. Talk about flashlights. I've been shooting, you know, off and on for about 20 years, and I've used primarily just surefire and streamlight the whole time. They've always been good to me. Of course, there's, you know, other lights like mod light and cloud defense now, and they do have good output. I just stuck with surefire and streamlight. This is a scout light. It is on an arisaka mount, so I can get that light tucked in nice and close, and I do have it back far enough from this flash hider that it doesn't really get hit with the muzzle blast. I don't even get carbon on my light at all. So that's something you also have to be very careful with, but it doesn't get hit at all where it is right now. But it does have a dual pressure pad, and I do have a plug-in for an IR device, so I do have control of both of them, but I do not have an IR device on here yet, but I will shortly. But make sure you retain your wires. I do have a Kevlar wrap from Burnproof Gear around this, so I am, protecting the wires that way. Obviously protecting my hand, the flashlight, etc. And that's just something you want to be careful with as well, because you don't want these wires to get snagged on anything. On the surefire pressure pad, these wires are pretty protected. I have broken one before, just not a surefire, but that's something you want to take into account as well. When it comes to slings, something I look for in a sling is how quickly I can actually adjust that sling. This Ferro Concept sling actually allows me to adjust it very quickly right here with this little pulley piece. So I do like this. It's just the Ferro Concept Slingster. It does have swivels on the end. You also want to be careful with these because they can wear down over time, and you do not want your rifle to fall and slam on the ground. So something you want to take into account. Also, tie up any loose ends. I just chose to use electrical tape so nothing gets snagged. And these are also pretty noisy. So how I overcome that is I push this plastic piece all the way forward, and then I will actually put a little piece of tape or a rubber band, ranger band, or a zip tie. So this is nice and stiff and doesn't rattle as much. You can also just take these off and pigtail your sling directly over the rail and through your stock or your brace. It's not very pretty, but it's an efficient way, a secure way, and it's a less noisy way of actually attaching a sling to your weapon. For the lower, this is a AMB lower. Not really necessary on a fighting rifle, but it is definitely nice to have. I can drop the bolt from the right side with my trigger finger, which I do like. I do have the Geisley Maritime bolt release on the left side. It just gives me a little bit more surface area, easier to drop the bolt and lock it down, especially if I'm wearing gloves or something like that. I do like having the 45-degree safety just because there's less travel and it's easier to put the weapon back on safe from fire. So something I do like, this is the Radiant Talon. I also like the Seekins Precision as well. We'll talk about castle nuts and end plates. I have a castle nut and end plate from Arrow, and I have a castle nut and end plate from Noveske. If you compare the two castle nuts, the Arrow has a much smaller notch, so you can't displace as much metal as you would if you were using the Noveske. I've also seen these Arrow castle nuts break before. Other manufacturers use them too, so that's something you want to be careful with, though I haven't seen one break in a while, so they could have just fixed that, or could have been a quality control issue. Also, the end plate, the Noveske is a lot thicker than the Arrow, so you can get a better staking, and I've also seen end plates that are too rigid to the point where they're brittle, or too rigid to the point where you can't even stake them, so that's something you also want to be careful with. Do not put Loctite on your castle nut. If you do that and you go to take the castle nut off later, you will shear these threads off your buffer tube. So do not put Loctite, just 40 pounds of torque and some stakings, and that will hold it. That will be enough to sufficiently stake everything. Make sure you Loctite all your your attachment points, your optics, etc. Make sure everything is secure. Do a noise check. Make sure you have fresh batteries. Even keep track of when you change your batteries, etc. If you can't always get out and shoot in full kit, dry fire on all your gear at your house just to make sure you're maintaining that skill, because this is a perishable skill, and you want to make sure you're nice and sharp in case you ever have to put that to work. But if you have any questions, comments, go ahead and leave them down below, and that's going to be it. I thank all of you guys for watching.